Good afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Crafty Chris bringing to you another Scrap Your Scraps episode, and this one is taking the scraps from a layout that you've just completed and figuring out what to do with them. So I just created a 4-page layout with a bunch of materials from a particular kit, and I have all this stuff that's left over. And I want to show you how to organize it. So first of all, you go through all these little bits and kind of get them into what are actual 12-inch pieces that can be reused, and what are shorter pieces that maybe might have some purpose. Like I have a bunch of these little guys, and these actually do have a purpose. They're for writing sentiments on and using as tags in your crafting session. So I'll show you what to do with those so that you make sure you're using them properly. This little strip is nothing on its own, but as a border that might work. Let's see. Whoops, I got a piece that has adhesive on the back of it. And do I feel like taking, yeah, that's kind of a cute pattern. Now here, this is where I run into a bit of problems. I know that I can use this flag or this arrow. Do I want to keep these? Because sometimes these are awesome to stick on pieces of cardstock that you have. And some of these will actually fit right away onto a piece of cardstock. So I think I'm going to hang on to that and show you what we can do with those later. So these little guys are little chunks, and we can use those little chunks. We can use these little chunks. And we have lots of little squares here that are already cut that we can use. Wow, we got lots of stuff here. Woo! Okay. So I'm not sure about these yet. They're kind of small. I may not use those. I'm going to put those aside. These are good for tags. I'm going to figure out the rest of those. I want to deal with this right now. So this is what I would call an awesome piece of junk, because it actually can be used for like a label or something. I just got to find the right piece of paper. It's going to be something that can fit this, but we'll do the big one later. I got lots of small ones. So we're going to cut this off right now and use that later. So this is definitely going to be used. Alrighty, so I got a bunch of these smaller type taggy things. I wonder if I can get those two in on one tag. I am going to try, I'm just going to snip this. You can see that I'm taking the outline of a tag, snipping it, and I am actually going to peel it, if I can, off the tag, off the background, and I'm going to stick it to this tag, right as close to the edge as I can get it. And there we go. So now, if I trim this out very carefully, I have a tag I can use in my next layout. And it already has its own frame, and I can just write a sentiment in there. So here we go. There we go. There's one tag that I can use in my next layout. Oops, that didn't get cut very nicely, did it? Oh well. Trim it. So I can put that with my selfie. Now I have a piece left, and I think I can actually squeeze this guy on there. So let's try that. Lots of little bitty bits when you get down to organizing these things. I'm having a little bit of a performance. Hopefully that didn't ruin everything. And I'm just going to trim along this line. And trim along this line, and trim along this line, and then I'm going to line that up by taking it off the sticky part and line it up with the end of my tag. Ooh, that's just going to fit. Look at that. So now I have some tags, and I have a phone ringing in my ear. Oops, I guess my husband's not answering. Sorry about the background noise. Okay, and so I have another tag. Look at how easy that was. And I'll show you how I keep these afterwards. Okay, I'm going to trim this out. Trim this out. And trim this out. So in order to make this video not too long so that you're not watching me do all this trimming, I'm going to start with something, and then what I'll do is show you how to do it, and then I'm going to literally turn the video off, do it all, so that you can see what the finished product is and move on to the next step. Otherwise you're going to be sitting here watching me do a bunch of trimming. Okay, so I am going to break at this point in the video, and then I will pick it up when I'm done. Okay, so we're back, and I've done with that little set, I've got myself 3 little flags, colored flags, that I can now put into my flag container, which I'll show you a little bit later, to use as descriptors for some of my pages that are coming up. And then of course I've got this guy here. Now I haven't found something for this big guy yet, but I'm still going through my bits and pieces. This package also came with some sticker labels, so I have more opportunities to use the outside edges of the ones that have been previously taken out. And then when I use these sections, which I will cut out separately and put into my container as is, then I can use those at that time. So there's a number of different options here that I can use. So I'm going to take a break and pull those together, and I'll be back with you again. Okay, so this is the pile that I got from the little tags that I had separated already, and from the 2 little sticker sheets I created a journal box just using a piece of lined paper, and I put the frame on top and trimmed it out. I've got a 2-colored piece of where I could put a title or a message, and then I have all these little arrows and journaling boxes and stars and circles and ovals that I created from the remaining negatives of where the stickers had been taken off the sheet. Then what I did after that was I cut up the sheet and I separated them the way I have them stored. I have them stored in maybe differently than others. I put anything that has a word in one pile. So words go in a pile, numbers go in that same pile, ampersands go in that pile, but I keep them separate because I use ampersands in my titles and things, so they have their own little pile. Now we still have a lot of these little white guys left over, even after I've used them for creating journal boxes. So what I do with those is I take a fine black marker and I literally just draw lines across the top and bottom, and they become another journal spot. So that's another journal spot, a number of these on a page. So I'll just quickly do that. And when I'm looking at my line, I don't use a ruler. The trick to doing a fairly straight line is not to look at the end of your pen nib, but to look at the edge of the paper. So you draw your line across the top, looking at the edge of the paper, not looking at the pen nib. And you also make sure that your wrist is not stuck to the tabletop. It needs to be able to flow if you have a long strip that you need to do. And it helps also if you don't move the paper. And if they cross over at the bottom, or if they just touch at the bottom, that doesn't matter either. So here I've got some crossing over happening. at the corners, and then there isn't any crossing over. So just randomly doing that to the remaining little bits of white paper there. So I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so from those little bits of paper, I've got now all of these little journal spots and flag notes that I can use on another layout, and they'll go in with that group of flag stuff. Okay, now so let's get back to doing a little more sorting. So I started sorting longer pages, and some of your papers may have actual borders on them with words on them. They get stored in with the borders. So I'm just going to take a look at what kinds of paper I have left over. Deal with that later, So I got bits and pieces, chunks. Okay, let's get them all into the middle here. So I think about how I normally use my paper. So normally I will use squares for, small squares like this. I think this is 2.5 by 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. So those squares I will easily use up in a layout, either in a flip-flap book, or if I'm doing sort of like a grid on, I might cut some pattern paper to go inside the white paper, depending on the color I'm using in the background. So squares like this I usually keep. The sizes of squares I keep depends on what the paper is. So I have a bunch of these little guys here too. Oh, there's another one I can make a statement out of, and I've got some of these guys. So I kind of just organized them in shape. These all look like rectangular shapes. These are a little small for mats. This I can use. Squares I like a lot. This big square is not going to fit in any of the storages that I have, and I probably won't use it verbatim, so I'm going to figure out how to cut this down to make this a usable piece for me, so I'll leave that aside for later. And let's see, we got another little square. I collect 1-inch squares as well, so I can mix and match papers. And these are kind of strips. This one is the one that has sticky on it. And you know what? I'm not even going to take the time. Goodbye. And this is a small strip as well. And these are larger rectangles. These look like they're all about the same size. These guys can be used. Okay. Rectangles, little strips. Alrighty, more strips. These are bigger strips. I don't know if I'll use that size. These are thinner strips. Okay, we've got a few of these. These little guys, I'm going to toss. They're just a little too small for anything. And they're not very long, so they're not going to help me. There's a longer strip, and that's kind of in this group here. All right, so now again, I look at what I can use these for. These actually might be fairly okay for doing corners and borders and little ephemera that I make, so I'm going to probably keep those the way they are. These guys are, this is 2 by 4, which is an odd size. So likely I would cut this down to 2 by 3. So let's do that right now. 2 by 3 is a standard picture size. So if you get a picture with a frame, if you print a picture, a 2 by 3 picture with a border, then you cut off the border, it'll fit perfectly. So 2 by 3. Okay, and then this guy can go in that pile. So here is something that actually could be a mat. So we're going to create a mat section. This one is 2 by 2 3/4. I'm going to make this one a square, so it's 2 by 2. And I do use squares on my mats a lot, and then I'm going to keep this to the side in this little grouping. Now these guys, that's 1.5. I could make a couple of squares out of 1.5, so I'm going to do that right now. Oh, helps if you don't lose it. 1.5 by 1.5, and then there's this little bit. So 1.5 by 1.5, definitely can use that. This one is an odd shape. It is 1.5, so let's make another 1.5 square. And this one is off, so we're just going to keep that to the side. There's a 1.5 square. These guys I can use for making some borders, so I'm going to put these guys together. Let's see, that's too short for a border, but I could make a flag out of that. And this I could make a flag out of. And these guys I could make flags out of. And that I could probably make a flag out of. Alrighty, so all these little bits and pieces, I just start making flags. So I just go in and cut my angles. And you saw how I did that. I just put a snip down the center, and then snipped from the side to the center and the side to the center. That's the easiest way. You could use a square punch. So there we go. There's one tag. And if I have cut other things slightly smaller, I could trim this up a little, and look how pretty that looks. So you have all these opportunities. I'm going to draw on that one shortly, to create different kinds of flags. And I wouldn't do double ends for all of them. I would do some double ends and some single ends. Whoops. So I got some single ends, some double ends. This one I might do an end at both ends. An end at both ends, if that makes any sense. Okay. There we go. Whoops! How nasty is that? There we go. So we have a double-ended arrow flag. Alrighty. And literally, I am just going to make flags from all these guys. So I will see you shortly. Okay, so I've cut up all those little bits and pieces into flags and then some arrows. I tend to keep my arrows and flags separate because they serve two totally different purposes. Okay, so at this point now I need to get rid of some of this so I can move on to the bigger stuff. And so in my drawer I have a whole series of these little containers. And in this case, I've got tabs and flaps and small journal spots. So things that I would consider journal spots are the stuff that has no shape to them, like these little white guys here. They would be journal spots. This would be a journal spot. This circle would be a journal spot. But because this has a tab or a flag end, I would include that in flags because of the shape. So these straight flat journal spots will go in there, and anything that has a tag shape, like that's an arrow, that would go there. Flags, oops, circles, I have a place for circles, I have a place for stars, and flags again, and these guys are just square, so they'd go in here, and there's another arrow. So my small journal spots are basically unshaped, or they have a pattern on them, like I'll show you a couple of them in here. So something like that, right? Or something like that, or bits and pieces of things that I've collected over time. So they're not like your standard flag shape, arrow shape, or geometric shape. All right, so the small journal spots are now in their container and in their drawer, and now the tabs and flags. So tabs and flags, so tabs, we know what they are. They're this kind of thing, okay? And flags, of course, are this kind of thing. So we have tabs and flags in this selection here. So tabs and flags go there. And geometric shapes go in here, and I have them sort of put together in their little shape containers. So just old plastic from previous ephemera and elements, and so I just put them in there. And where's my arrows? Oh, here's my circles. So my circle will go in there. And there's my arrows. So, and my arrows have everything from wood to paper. So these guys all go in there. Okay. And I try not to crush them if possible. This one is getting quite full, so that tells me I've got to start using up some stars and arrows and things. Which is this is how I get rid of stuff, is I see if I'm getting overloaded in geometric shapes, then I put together a geometric layout to use up all those shapes and start again. Alright, so we got flags. Okay. And alrighty, so now we are at the point where I want to show you where I put some of these pieces of paper. So I have this container, and some of you may have seen this before. This is, I think, an art box, but I think you can get them in all different kinds of containers. So I have raw material on this side, and then I have created things on this side. So like, for instance, if I've taken some flower shapes that I have and put them together and created an actual decorative piece, then they go on this side so that I use them up. This is where my go-to for like corners and cards and border pieces to add to borders, that kind of thing. And I have a generic-y sort of organization. So we have Inspire. Those are things like You Are Awesome, that kind of stuff. Friendship, which is you know, hey there friend, that kind of thing. Christmas, love, fall, memories. This is just stuff like good times, my favorite, I remember this, that kind of stuff. And these are all finished pieces. And this is generic and thank you. So, you know, if you're making a card just to say hello to somebody, I've made a border that can literally just be stuck on a card. And then, of course, I have some of these smaller borders that you can use in the corner of layouts or on cards. You know, if they're this small, you have a choice of all the different ways you can use it. And then birthday at the bottom as well. So this side is all the colors, and I'm looking at these papers, and I've got some oranges, and I try, when I have two-sided paper, I try to sort of like, these are both the same paper, so I'll put 2 for the blues and 2 for the oranges. This is multicolored, so I do have a multicolored package to put things in, and this one is green, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Alrighty, so I have a green piece. I go in here. Now I'm looking and seeing that this green piece is too big for this, so I have a different place for larger pieces of paper. So anything that will fit in this that's made with green stuff, and I think this is also white and black, goes in here. So bits and bobs that go in there. Let's see, we've got blue and turquoise in this one. Okay, so I have little collections of paper, and I'm looking at this. This will fit. So this is kind of a turquoisey or a light blue. I'm not really sure which one I'm going to put it in, but as long as it's in there, when I'm doing my layouts, I can see the color and just pull it out. So it's going to go in here, and I have all my little bits and pieces that I can make tags or flags. What I'm trying to do now is make tags or flags before I get them here. This is raw materials, so when I finish a layout, I try to make tags and flags right away and put them in the tags and flags ready to go thing, so that, you know, I use them up more. Multicolored is here in the pink folder, because I don't do a lot of pink. So there are pinks, but you know, there are orangey pinks to pink pinks. This I feel is more orange, so I'm not going to put it in there. This is my multicolored pack. So I'm going to open up this Ziploc, and you can get these at the dollar store. You don't have to buy them, you know, from expensive art stores. They're just bags. And then I'll put that in there. Okay. And then orange, and this is orange and brown, so I have my oranges and my browns in here. And you know, if I have big enough paper and I have some time, I try to book a night a month to do some shape punching for some of these things. But some of the things are too small, obviously, so they become parts of borders and card fronts and things like that. Okay, there we go. And you can see I'm not overwhelmed with stuff. There's a lot of stuff here, but I'm not overwhelmed with it because I go back to this all the time. And that's the point, is to use it. There's no sense organizing it if you're not going to use it. So that's one way I keep the smaller bits organized. And then for these larger bits, these guys are all 12 by 12s. Now, some of these are really big. And some of these are, you know, like that inch wide, and some of these are super thin, but they're all 12 by 12. So I have two ways of organizing these. The smaller, thinner strips, I have this coffee, it was a gift coffee thing where it was full of Timothy's coffees, and I put two of them together, and they're actually cool little drawers. Now this one is overfilled, and I got to get working on it to use it up. So basically, I'm going to hold it sideways here. At the bottom, I have pieces of, I'll just pull the whole thing out here. It's really full. Got to do some work. So this is where these pieces would go. And I even put borders that have sayings and things on them, because when I'm putting pages together, I look here for paper to use as borders, so I'll see those borders available. The other place I could put these, if they have words on them especially, is in my word section, and I'll show you where that is. And let me just pull the other one out so I can show you and put those away. And these white strips I find are handy, the same with just little black strips. Woo! That guy's not even 12 by 12, so he doesn't belong there. Now these guys I could put in here, but to be honest, they're a little big, and it's much easier to flip smaller pieces of paper in here. So I'm going to put that one back. Okay. Whoops! You gotta make sure you don't crush your paper when you're doing it. Now the next drawer up is for those odd size pieces. Oh look, I have lots of odd size pieces. And I've been doing a lot of crafting lately with kits and things, so I haven't been keeping up with my using up my scraps. So that's something I do have to do. So all these smaller strips that don't fit in the little containers, that aren't quite 12 by 12, they go in this section here, except for these square and rectangular shapes, and I'll show you where they go. All right, now I'm going to put this guy back. And then also in this, in the upper two drawers, I have glitter, which I separate completely. And then anything that I've kind of pre-cut that I think, that might make an interesting sort of element on a page. Or I may have done, you know, 3 or 4 frames and I only used one. So those kinds of things kind of end up in the top drawer. You notice I don't have too many of them because generally I cut those specific for the project. So I may end up using this up and moving more of the larger paper in there. Oh, okay, there we go. So that is my strip keeper. Now for the actual paper scraps, the larger scraps, I have a scrap container and I have some filing to do. Yes, I am not the best at keeping up with my filing. So under all of these things that require filing, which are in plastic bags, are my organization. So I have a folder, like just one of these plastic dividers, and it divides, you know, light red, light purple, dark purple, and all the different colors in, I guess, up to the tertiary colors. So the primary colors, the secondary colors, and some of the tertiary colors. So this color here is turquoise, and we have gray. So I'm going to find my blues. So here's blues, and I have light blues and dark blues. I'm going to consider this a light blue. because it's more bluey to me, and I kind of look at turquoise as being a blue thing. And then oh, I do have turquoise. Sorry, I lied. Pulling it out, pulling it out. Where'd the blue go? I haven't used this so long, I've forgotten my organizational thing. So this does have turquoise. Wait, and there's turquoise. Okay, so turquoise is going to go in there. Alrighty. Okay, and then gray, I don't even think I have a folder for gray because I don't use gray very often. Whoops! Don't hammer your head with your folder. So I'm going to put gray on top for now, and I'm going to get another, I have a bunch of these file dividers, and I'm going to put a gray holder in there. So obviously I have some work to do, and this is what I mean by dedicating some time in your month to get these kinds of tasks done in order to keep your crafting area usable. And once I get this like put away properly, then this will all close and I'll be ready to run with it. So that's for the big paper. Now, I have, for these small scrappy pieces, you're going to think I'm insane, but I've got one of these albums that I picked up at the Paper Crafters Workshop, and it's my scrap paper, mats, and element tags. So in here, I have all my random papers in front, but I also have it organized by different divisions too. So things that I think are fall-like go in the fall section, and things I think are Christmas-like go in the Christmas section. Things that I think are winter-like, that could be anything just from snow to Valentine's Day. I have spring, I have flowers, I have summer, and of course I've got the fall and winter in the front. So these guys don't have, they could be considered spring, but there's nothing really spring about them. So in here I have them organized by red, orange, yellow, green, blue. This is blue pattern, this is blue plain, kind of purples. And there's not enough purples, so I put the pattern and the plain together. But at the time when I collect more purples, and maybe I have more of the cardstocky purples than I do the pattern purples, then I'll move these guys out into their own page. Turquoise patterned and then turquoise plain. And I think I'm going to consider these guys turquoise. And you see how I have them kind of lined up in here? So literally, I'm using pocket pages to store these guys, and I try to find the size that they fit, so when I'm going through them I can kind of see what I got available. Okay, there we go. Actually, I should have put that plain one, because this is all pattern paper. These are plain papers, so this is going to go in here. And I try to keep it neat if I can. If I can't, oh well. And here, these guys are going to go in here because I don't have any small squares at the time. And like these, this is actually 4 1/4 by 6 1/4. It doesn't sit quite flat. That's why I have it in an album, because when I stand the album up, it doesn't put any pressure on the paper and wrinkle the paper. And when I pull this out, it's still going to lay flat. This is green, so let's go to our green section. This is multi. This is beige, this is like craft, brown, blacks with pattern, blacks without pattern, and then on to the seasonal stuff. So let's see, we're here with greens, and greens I've got a mix of pattern and plain because I don't have a lot of pattern green, but I'll put it in here so I can kind of see what I've got. And this we're going to do orange because we've already done a fair number of blue ones, and I'll fit that in blue pattern or orange pattern paper right there. Okay, and so I keep all my extra things in the back. I have these big ones. Haven't been using them, so I don't know. I may just use them for albums because I do these smaller albums anyway, so I may just pull these out and use them actual for album pages. But I use the 6 by 6 pages And of course I use the split 3x4 and 4x6 pages. Alrighty, so that's how I organize those pieces. Actually, alright, okay, and that goes in my album, and it's marked, and it sits on my desk, and I pull from that album frequently. You can see that that's in much better shape than my large scraps. Large scraps and me right now are having a hard time. Now these little guys, I want to say I would keep these, but you know what? White paper and me, I have a ton of white paper. I've got all this, oh, I forgot to put that in. I have all this white paper as well. And, oh, can I throw it out? I'm going to throw it out. Ta-da! See, sometimes you can throw things out, even if you're not absolutely sure. Things that you don't want to spend the time dealing with are good things to throw out. So I'm going to go to the back where my white is. Do I have a white? Aha! I use a lot of white, so there's probably not a great amount of white. So I'm going to go to the back of my binder, pull out one of the 3x4 sheets. There we go. Close this up, go to where the black is, and I'm going to put it behind the black. This is actually black paper. It's a pattern with black. And here we go. So we're going to put these guys in my 3x4, and now I have started a white page. And that is it. That's how those get stored. Okay. Okay, and we have the borders and the words now. Whew. Borders and words and ampersands and numbers. So I have a folder. It's I think it's a solutions or a cropper hopper or something like that. I can't remember. Anyway, it's just like a folder, and it has everything. It's not a letter. It's not for letters because I have a whole separate folder for letters. This is sayings. So all kinds of word sayings. If I have small word sayings, you'll find in here a very tiny bag of small sayings somewhere. And then I have, of course, a whole sheet of sayings here. Where are we? I can't find my bag. Okay, I might have to start a new one. Maybe I used it. Because I do use sayings quite a bit in my layouts. I use them for titles and different things. So I'm going to pull out a couple of these baggies. I have super small baggies, but I'm not going to use super small baggies. Where's my ampersands? I do have an ampersand bag. Oh well, for now, I gotta show you. Okay, there's gotta be ampersands in here because I use those all the time. Isn't that weird? No ampersands. Okay. Oh, they may be in one of my small things. I gotta check that out. I may have moved these because they're often small. I may have moved these into my little containers. So we're going to leave those aside for now. Oops, my tag that tells me what this is just came off. Alright, so I'm going to be putting these guys into this little bag so they don't get lost. And there's all kinds of different little sayings here. And this little bag gets zipped up and it gets popped right into my container at the front. These guys that have the words on them, one happy day, they're going to go towards the back so they don't get too crushed. And there we have it. And that sits up in my shelving with all my other things. So all I have left right now is this guy, these guys, and some of these guys. Okay, so here's what I do with these guys. I have a little bit of what do you want to call it? A bit of an addiction to bling. And I have found these little tiny in the dollar store, these little mini mason jars. And what I've done is I've taken the top and I've pop taped it to the underside of my shelf so that I have all these little jars hanging down from my shelf. And then in these jars is where I put these things. So, and I do it by color. But I try to keep similar things together, and I will reorganize if they're too big to fit. So I just trim these up, pop them in there, and like for instance, these guys can probably move over to one side. Whoop. So I will reorganize those guys to stay together. And these are all green, so they're all going to go together. Just trim it up, pop those in there, and there's a lot of excess plastic here. And I think I'm just going to trim this down a little bit more. And I don't care if there's 2 on 1 or 3 on 1. Drop that in there, drop that in there, drop that in there. Try to keep the colors together as much as possible. That one slid. These guys, when they get hot, will slide, so you want to be careful. You're making sure not to get them all heated up and slippery. So I'm just going to smush them all together here and try to pull up these little guys into one little package. Now that isn't going to fit obviously, so I'm going to cut it down this side like that. So now they will fit. And these guys can be cut as well. So I'm going to cut these guys into those sizes. And these guys into those sizes. And there you have it. All my little gems, all my green gems will go in here. I also have other ways to store them, so until other things that currently hold all of my bling in them are used up, anything new I'm now putting into these little mason jars, and they're big enough just for little bits of bling. And I'm going to screw that back underneath my my shelf. Okay. Now back to my little box of stuff. Alright, so back to my drawer. Now, random objects may have my ampersands in it. So random objects is like, you know, hearts, all kinds of different hearts, birdhouses, coffee cups, mandala type thingies, a lot of objecty things, you know, like dresses and weird tickets and whatnot, but I don't see my ampersands in here, so that's not going to hold my ampersands. Oh, I have these little guys too. These are vellum, and they are different shapes. So this is kind of a random object, but it's a summertime object. These are words, fact 1, fact 3, and this is like a positioning dot. These are shapes. So we have stars, and another positioning dot, and this is a number 10. This I will keep because I can use that for a later storage thing. And can I put any of those things in here right now? There's ocean, beach, ocean and beach. So ocean and beach is all kinds of things, like I've got oceany brads that are all shells. I've got some random bits and pieces of underwater flora and some shells of different natures, and I just like this image and I think it's so cute, so I've kept that in the same place. And I am going to put my sunglasses in there because it's beach. And what else do we have? Okay, so this is borders, and I can use those borders, and here I have a container that's larger in the same drawer for longer things like borders that aren't 12 by 12. So in here I have wooden negatives, I have, you know, what do you call it, chipboard edgings, paper borders that are shorter than 12 inches, so they all go in there. Got a lot of stuff, and I'm looking for my geometrics, because my geometrics, we're going to put those stars in our star container. So we put our stars in our star container. These are not sticky, so you don't have to wrap them with a piece of tape to keep them protected. They just go right in there. All right, and flowers, ocean tags, pictures, mirrors and frames, and backgrounds. Okay, I don't know where I can't have used them all. Anyway, let's get them into a little container. These I am going to put in a tiny little mini bag because there's not a lot of them. And I'm going to put them in my random objects because I really don't know why I don't have my it should really be in my words thing. So I think I'm going to keep them in the words thing, but put them in a little container for my ampersands. And for now, because I just want to throw them in, I've got facts with words on it. I've got little what do you call those things, markers with words on it, and I have a number 10, so that's all going to go in there, and that's going to go up into my container that holds all my word-like ephemera, stickers, and that stuff. And so that's going to go away. And this is a little piece that I can keep if I want, but these ones I find are too crispy. I like the ones with the Ziploc, so I'm going to toss that in the garbage. And this is all that's left of that package that we started with at the beginning of the day. So I hope that you were able to take something from this video to help you organize yourself and to get into the habit of finishing a layout and preparing all your bits and pieces for other layouts when you're done. And thank you very much for joining me. It's Crafty Chris again, and I am saying sayonara. This is not a live video, so next week, next Thursday, I will be live again. I'm just taking a little bit of a break. So enjoy your weekend, and I will see you next week. Bye!